Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online character build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, I'm just bringing you guys something that I find fun to play, an interesting roleplay type build. It is called the Bloodhunter. It is based on Dungeons & Dragons, a class by the same name, the Bloodhunter. It is a fun, just overall build made for pretty much any kind of play. You can play it in groups, you can play it in solo play, you can play it in PvP. It works everywhere, and it's essentially the one hybrid type build that I've made that works just overall really good, and I really like it, and I'm having a lot of fun with it, both on PTS and on the live servers. I just recently changed my Nightblade healer into this because I just find it a lot more fun, a lot more interesting to play, so let's go ahead and jump into it. But before we get started, disclaimer, this is a roleplay casual play build. This is not meant for meta play, but it will play all the same content as meta players. It's just not meant for doing progression play in time runs or score runs for dungeons or trials. Alright, so let's get started. So as you can see, we are the Bloodhunter. This is a Dark Elf Nightblade. Dark Elf is going to be the best for this, hands down. It's really good. Just put it that way. We have 64 points in the stamina. This gives us 23k magicka, 23,996 magicka, almost 24k. 20,000 health, 30,000 max stamina. We do have a 798 mag recovery, 909 stamina recovery. Do not stress this. This build can self-sustain pretty well, even with these lower recovery rates. We do have a 1994 spell damage with a 34 weapon damage, 49% spell crit, 49% weapon crit, 13k spell resistance, just about 13k physical resist. We do have minor berserk at all times. We are using the Thief Mudstone, and we are using Tri-Stat food. Alright, moving on to the equipment and gear. Potion-wise, I do use tri-potions primarily. You can use warrior power pots or stamina power pots, the ones that increase your weapon crit, weapon damage, and stuff, but you really don't need it. This build is primarily, just like I said, a fun build. It is not meant to be meta in any way, so. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the sets we're running, starting with our monster set. We are running Slimecross. Slimecross is just a really good set for this because it gives you that spell crit, that weapon crit, and then the two-piece gain minor berserk at all times, increasing your damage done by 8%. Now that minor berserk applies to all damage you deal, whether it's magicka or stamina. Since this build is more hybrid, you use both magicka and stamina, and it applies to both. Alright. Moving on to our next set, and this is primarily, can be played in any armor type, so you can play this in light, medium, or heavy. It's your choice. Letting you know now, the thing that's going to change is your spell critical and your spell penetration. So the next set we're running is Nightmother's Gaze. Nightmother's Gaze, to me, is if you don't have a way of getting fracture in, not even just in a group, but by yourself, any kind of fracture, this can help you get that major fracture, and it helps with your stamina DPS a lot. So that's one of the reasons why I run this set, and I just really like I said, the combination. Alright, moving on to the next set. The next set we are running, well, let me tell you what Bloodhunter or Nightmothers does. So weapon crit on the 2-piece, 3-piece, weapon damage, 4-piece weapon crit, and then the 5-piece. When you deal critical damage, you apply major fracture to the enemy, reducing physical resistance by 5,280 for 6 seconds. This applies with any critical damage, whether it's magicka or stamina. Alright, moving on to the next set, we are using War Maidens. War Maidens, excellent set for this build. I was running the... oh god, I can't even remember the name of it now. It's another light armor set. Let me go look it up real quick, guys. Because it is right here, Withered Hand. I was running the Withered Hand set. Very good set. I mean, it gives you some recovery. It makes you versatile. Okay, but it works better if you're running that with like medium armor, or if you're running like a Necromancer and Nightblades. Work really good with Withered Hand. But in this setup, personally, I find Nightblade works better with War Maidens, and that's because War Maidens gives you 2-piece spell crit, 3-piece max magicka, 4-piece spell damage, and then on the 5-piece adds 400 spell damage to your magic damage abilities. Most Nightblades, their magic stuff, it does magic damage. It doesn't do fire damage, it doesn't do ice damage, it doesn't do lightning damage, it does magic damage. So this plays really well into the Nightblade, especially well. So I really like it. Alright, now we're going to go over traits and enchants, starting with the monster set and the chest and the legs. So on the chest, the legs, and the helm, we are using tri-stat enchants. This is so we can hybridize a little better, so we can have more magicka, health, and stamina. I mean, it really depends on how you want to put together the stats on your character. I find tri-stats work great for hybridizing. They work great for anything. On the smaller pieces, when it comes to enchants, the shoulders and belt, we are using max magicka enchants, and then on the boots and gloves, we are going to use max stamina enchants. Now, a lot of people will have pointed this out to me, and I want to clarify something. This is 702 magicka and stamina that you're getting from these two enchants. With gold enchants, whether it's purple gear or it's gold gear, you will get 702 resources. When you add in all the amplifications from everything else, plus all the other enchant things you have on your character, stat-wise, what other your set pieces give you, stat-wise, all that stuff adds up. And this gives you a good balance of magicka and stamina. You don't need much more than 30k magicka to be good. You don't, or stamina to be a good stamina DPS, and 25k magicka makes you really powerful anyway. So depending on which way you go with the build, what sets you're using, different things like that, it really plays into the overall capabilities of the build. Alright, so now that I've done that, let's go over the traits. Traits, really simple. Invigorating helm, invigorating legs. This is to increase your mag recovery, health recovery, and stamina recovery. Playing a hybrid, you really want to have a good balance of resource return with good resource pools. So that's why we use the invigorating and the tri-stats. On the smaller pieces, we are using all divines. This is going to increase our Mundus Stone effect. We are using the Thief Mundus Stone that gives us both spell and weapon critical. So that's really good. And then moving on to jewelry, we are using 2 weapon damage enchants on the ring and a stamina recovery on the necklace. And the traits we're using on the rings are Trirune, again to hybridize, give us more resources in all 3 pools. And then of course with the necklace, we are using the Bloodthirsty to increase our damage against enemies under 25% health by 10%. Alright, moving on to weapons. Now, you can go a multitude of different ways here. You can go two-handed in bow, you can go dual wield in bow, or dual wield two-handed and dual wield. There's a lot of options in the way you could build this out, and there's other things you could do, like you can incorporate a Maelstrom bow, a Master's bow, Master's dual wield, Maelstrom dual wield, the Black Rose Prison dual wield, or you could even use the Asylum Sanctorum dual wield bows on either bar. It really doesn't matter. It really comes up to, like I said, the way you choose to play it. But primarily, you're going to want to be able to get your War Maidens on the front bar. So moving on to the weapons. With this setup, I'm using a sharpened main hand with an absorb magicka enchant. This is a way for me to sustain my magicka, because it's not that I have a sustain issue, it's you don't want a sustain issue. So having an absorb stamina or magicka here really helps out, and the sharpen gives you that higher physical and spell penetration. This allows you to produce more damage. Moving on to the War Maidens, we are using, again, on the offhand, Nirnhond. Nirnhond, to me, is the best in offhand because it's going to increase your damage of this weapon by 15%, and 6% of your offhand damage gets carried over to your overall damage. So it's really good to have that Nirnhond there. And then the Absorb Stamina here. Absorb Stamina, this is going to allow you to deal physical damage and get stamina back. So, really nice trade-off. And then moving on to the bow, of course we are using Infused with a weapon spell damage enchant. And this is going to increase your weapon damage and spell damage by X amount for 5 seconds. It will stay reapplied if you use the right skill combinations. It's just, overall, it's powerful, okay? Alright, now that you guys have seen it, let's go over skills. Starting with skills on the main bar, and there's a lot of different ways you can set up the bars. This is one that I've been playing around with on live, and I find it works really good, but I still feel like Bloodthirsty fits better in the second slot, but that's just me. Alright, let's start with the first skill. We have Rending Slashes. Great ability, does lots of damage from the skill, but it does decent amount of damage up front and decent amount of damage over time. It also can reduce movement speed. Kinda nice. Next ability we have is Surprise Attack. This is a Nightblade ability. This deals X amount of physical damage. This is your primary spammable. And if you are attacking an enemy from behind or the side, flanking them, you will actually apply a physical resistance reduction by 5% for 10 seconds. And attacking with Surprise Attack while sneaking or invisible stuns an enemy for 3 seconds and sets them off balance. But it's primarily that flanking thing where you can hit them from the side or from the back, and you get that 5% reduction in their resistance, and it'll happen every time you hit a target from behind. So it's really good. Next ability we have is Funnel Health. I know a lot of people are going to question this, but this is just a nice ability. It steals an enemy's life force, dealing X amount of magic damage and healing you or to other nearby allies for 56% of the damage inflicted every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. It's, like I said, it's a great ability for keeping you in health, keeping you alive and stuff. Next ability we have is Quick Cloak. Now, you don't have to use Quick Cloak. You can use Deadly Cloak. I like this. It gives you 12 seconds of major evasion and reduces damage you take from area of attacks by 25%. Every 2 seconds, the shrapnel will pulse, dealing X amount of physical damage to all enemies in a 5-meter radius. And then on top of that, for 4 seconds after activating this, you get Major Expedition. This allows you to move and keep up that surprise attack capability to reduce enemy armor. So, next ability we have is Killer's Blade. This is our Execute, and we will be using this quite a bit. This deals disease damage, and it deals 300% more damage to enemies under 25% health. It heals you for X amount of health if an enemy dies within 2 seconds of being struck, and the portion of this ability scales off your max health. Next ability we have is the Assassination ability, Incapacitating Strikes. You don't have to use this if you don't want to. I like to use it because it's a very powerful ability. It deals disease damage and causes them to take 20% more damage from your attacks for 6 seconds. And it's a super cheap ultimate, so you can fire this off quite a bit. So if I'm not using this, I will be using something like Flawless Dawnbreaker, or I will be using the Rend, or Thrive in Chaos from the dual wield as my ultimates. So, moving on to the back bar, we have our first ability, and I love this ability. It is called Debilitate, and what it does is it does magic damage over 10 seconds and reduces the enemy movement speed by 50% for 4 seconds, but while the effect persists for the 10-second duration, the enemy is afflicted with minor Magicka Steal, causing you and your allies to restore 300 Magicka every second when damaging them. This really, really helps out, especially in trash fights or in content where your group spreads apart, and you might have a healer there that's putting, the Magicka Steal on an enemy, but they're usually focusing that staff ability on one target, and not usually mainly the target you're focusing on. So it's like, okay, I'm going to go face this one, I'm going to put this on him. And it just helps you get that Magicka Steal on more targets. It's really nice. Next ability we have is Venom Arrow. Again, does decent damage up front, decent damage over time, and then of course it can interrupt. If an enemy is casting an ability, it can interrupt them, set them off balance, and stun them for 3 seconds. I like using this ability. A lot of people like using Poison Injection. It does a little bit more damage. Next ability is Endless Hail. Great ability, does damage over time. In a 5-meter radius, it lasts for 12 seconds, which is actually 2 seconds, or, yeah, 2 seconds, I believe, longer than the Arrow Barrage. Next ability we have is called Relentless Focus. This one, you focus your senses for 30 seconds, reducing damage taken by 2% with every light or heavy attack, stacking up to 5 times. While active, hitting an enemy with 5 light attacks or heavy attacks converts this ability into Assassin's Scourge, allowing you to fire a spectral bow for half the cost and deals X amount of disease damage and heals you for 33% of the damage dealt if you are within 7 meters of the enemy. And then we have Leeching Strikes. This primarily gives you health back anytime you light attack or heavy attack, and it will also restore 106 stamina for the for each light and heavy attack, and then for 20 seconds. Heavy attacks do restore twice the amount, but you know, you also restore up to X amount of additional stamina when the effect ends, based on the length of time that Leeching Strikes was active. I usually try to keep my Leeching Strikes active every other rotation, so this way I can let it run its course, and usually by the second rotation or so, I'm usually down to about 1 second or less, and then I can just activate it, and it'll give me a nice chunk of stamina back. As you guys can see there, it gave me 861 is what it said. It actually gives you more than that, but it's really nice. Alright, so now that I've shown you guys that skill, the final skill we have on our bar here, this is primarily for group support and damage. I really love this ability, and this is Veil of Blades. This thing is really awesome. When you set it down, it is an ultimate, costs 200. It reduces movement speed of enemies by 70%, dealing magic damage to them every second for the duration of 18 seconds. And it grants you and your allies major protection, reducing damage taken by 30%. Allies in the area can activate the Hidden Refresh synergy, granting them invisibility, increasing their movement speed by 70%, and healing them for X amount of health over 4 seconds. Alright, so that's how I run this build primarily. Now, when it comes to skills I have unlocked, starting with Assassination, I do have Incapacitating Strikes, Killer's Blade, Ambush, Mirage, Reaper's Mark, Relentless Focus, and then moving on to the Shadow side, I have Veil of Blades, Surprise Attack, Dark Cloak, love this for healing, Refreshing Path, Manifestation of Terror, Dark Shade, which is also a really great ability. Moving on to the back bar, or the last one, Siphoning, we have Soul Siphon, Funnel Health, Shrewd Offering, Debilitate, Leeching Strikes, and Sap Essence. Sap Essence is a great ability if you're you need an AoE that does damage. There's 2 you can use here. So if you need really good AoE damage, there is the dual wield, Steel Tornado, or there is the Sap Essence. I prefer using Sap Essence because it does damage and it heals me and my allies. It does give me major sorcery, which is nice, but overall, it just comes down to what you prefer to use. Moving on to the dual wield side, we do use Thrive in Chaos. This is an awesome ultimate ability. Then we have Bloodthirsty, Rending Slashes, Steel Tornado, Quick Cloak, Shrouded Daggers, and then on the bow side, we have Toxic Barrage, Lethal Arrow, Endless Hail, Draining Shot, Acid Spray, and Venom Arrow. And of course, with everything, I always unlock the passives for every skill line I have. If I have a skill in it, I unlock the passives. Moving on to armor, we are a light armor build with this, so you can take something like Harness Magicka. This gives you a decent damage shield, as you can see, for 6 seconds, and it gives you Magicka back, which is really cool. So, then all the passives here. On medium armor, I take the top 3 and the bottom 1, and then with heavy armor, I take the top 3. Now, moving on to world skills. With this, I do take the Ledgerman stuff, because this is primarily like a thief, assassin type character, and I really liked that concept, so I stick with it. Soul Magic, Ultimate, active abilities, and the passives. I do take all those. And then moving on to guild skills. This is where it's going to get surprising for some of you. I do take the Dark Brotherhood and Thieves Guild passives. This way, this character can play into that role really well. Fighters Guild, Ultimate, Flawless Dawnbreaker, active abilities, Silver Leash, Ring of Preservation, Evil Hunter, and Bard Trap are the ones I unlock. Also the passives, and then moving on to Mages Guild, I unlock Ice Comet, Inner Light, Degeneration, Scalding Ruin, and Balance, and then of course the passive abilities here. Psijic Order, I didn't unlock the passives. I always usually unlock these, but since they're, it looks like this when you're coming here and you're filling it in, you sometimes do forget to fill that out because you see that first one's already unlocked. But yeah, Temporal Guard, great for when I want to have some extra protection, especially in PvP. Time Freeze is really good. Crushing Weapons really good. Race Against Time is really good. Min Spirit's really good if you want to have some extra healing capabilities. This build can heal a group, just to let you know, in dungeons. Really powerful. Introspection for when I need resources or I'm having resource management issues. Sanguine Altar, another great ability. Shadow Silk, Inner Beast, Spike Bone Shield, and Mystic Orb. These are the Undaunted line, and of course the Undaunted passives. Alliance skills, I take Aggressive Warhorn, Echoing Vigor, Razor Caltrops, and then on the support side I take Replenishing Barrier, Efficient Purge, Stalwart Guard, and Magic Aid. And then of course with the racials, we are Dark Elf, so I take all the Dark Elf passives. Dynamics, really great, gives you magic, a stamina of 1875. Then this one increases your flame resistance and you gain immunity to burning status effects. And then of course there's Ruination, increasing weapon and spell damage by 258. Crafting, Alchemy, medicinal use, great for in-game play, like if you're playing Dungeons or Trials, or even in PvP. And then also Provisioning, Gourmand, and Connoisseur also play really well into those aspects as well. So, now that I've done that, we're going to go over our champion points. This is a hybrid setup, guys. So, 56 Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. 10 into Spell Shield, increasing spell resistance by 1003. Then we have 28 into Light Armor Focus. This increases your physical resistance by 2542. And then we have 31 into Thick Skin, reducing your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. 43 in a Hardy, reducing damage taken from physical poison, disease damage by 10%, and 43 in Elemental Defender, reducing your damage taken from Flame Frost, Shock, and magic damage. Moving on over here, we have 40 in the Bastion, increasing the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%, 19 into Quick Recovery, increasing your healing received by 5%, and then of course over here we have 40 in the Warlord, reducing the cost of Break Free by 16%, 16 in the Sprinter, reducing the sprint cost by 10%, 16 in a Bashing Focus, reducing your bash cost by 10%. And then moving on to the middle tree, little unusual here, but we have 43 in our Mooncalf. This increases stam recovery by 10%. 75 in Arcanus, increasing magic recovery by 14%. And then moving on over here, we have 40 in the Tumbling, reducing the cost of dodge roll by 16%, and 40 in the Shadow Ward, reducing the cost of block by 16%. Moving on, 43 in the Blessed, increasing healing done by 10%. 23 in the Elfborn, increasing critical damage and critical healing with magic abilities by 10%. 43 in Elemental Expert, increasing Flame Frost, Shock, and magic damage done by 10%. Moving on to the middle tree here, we have 35 in a Physical Weapon Expert. This increases light and heavy attack damage with your dual wield and bow by 20%. And then, of course, we have 40 in the Mastered Arms. This increases your damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. Moving on to the final tree, we have 43 in the Mighty, increasing your physical poison disease damage by 10%. 23 in the Precise Strikes, increasing your critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 10%. And then 20 in the Thaumaturge. This increases your damage done with damage over time effects by 9%. And just like with all of my builds that I've been showing you guys lately, we are going to jump over to Lair of Marsalek. Lair of Marsalek for a quick little jaunt through the dungeon all the way up to Selene, the first encounter, just to show you its effectiveness. And before anyone says anything, all of my builds do work in normal and veteran content. Every build does. Whether it's a solo build, damage dealer build, a healer build, a tank build, support build. All these builds work in group content, whether it is normal or veteran. That is one reason why I make these builds the way I do, with gold gear and super high-end skill, like super max level. Now, if you guys are also wondering, yes, I do play this in live, like I said, but I do not play it with the same setup. I actually run close to the same setup, but I run the monster set Bogdan's because I like to offer more group support when I play the build. So but I really like this build because it's really good, a really good kind of supportive build with healing, some debuff stuff, and then of course the you know, a few other things, but we won't discuss that right at this moment. There we go. See, now we get a critical hit and we get the minor fracture on there. Or major fracture. Would you take this, like, a creature that should die? But any build you play, if you're good enough with it, anything can be solo played. Anything can be, you know, because you're going to become more experienced with the build, the play structure of it, and its skills and everything, and you're gonna get better. So, all right. Come on. I do really like this build, though. I have a lot of fun with it, especially on the live service when you get in a dungeon group. And people are like, "Where's Magic Steel coming from? Where's how are you doing this? How are you doing this?" And it's like, I just like my build a lot. So you almost don't need anything that's Magicka related, like for buffing, because you barely use any Magicka. It's more stamina focused, but it's still nice to have that high Magicka damage output if you are going to use a few more Magicka based abilities. Like sometimes I like to use the Shade, because it's such a powerful ability. So. And I might actually be switching to that here in a second. Like putting Shade on my guard. I mean, if you wanted more stam recovery, you could go for it. Because you really don't need that much in mag recovery, just enough to keep you going. And with the minor magicka still and all the other stuff you have that gives you magicka back, like, you really don't need anything else, so.
Am I to understand you're a follower of Zen? Return my freedom, and I will right the wrongs done here.
Unbind her, Corinda.
Unwind. I shall loosen my hold over.
Now for payment in kind. It's my turn to study your insides.
I warned you of my hesitation.
No! Don't let her get Corinda! Develop!
Oh no, run away! Hiya! I'm just gonna go ahead and whack him a little bit with my heavy attacks. Ow. He's dead. Oh wow, look at that. I come around the corner and whack. Venomous Fangs. Alright, but yeah, it's a really fun build. It's really good. It does work. Unlike what many might say, it is a fun build and it's just really cool. It's just something I really like playing. And sometimes it's nice to be different than everyone else, so. But that is it for the Bloodhunter, guys. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more builds by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.